The disappearance in Rosenfeld. Rosenfeld was the kind of town people drove through without remembering its name. Old brick factories sat abandoned at the edge of the forest, their broken windows reflecting the fading sun. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, almost staged. Nothing ever happened here until October 12, 2009. That night, 16-year-old Sophia Keller vanished. She had been at a friend's small birthday gathering and was last seen at the bus stop, waiting to head home. When her mother woke in the middle of the night and realized Sophia's bed was still empty, she knew something was wrong. First, the police didn't. "Teenagers run away all the time," the officer on duty said. "She'll come back in a day or two." But Sophia wasn't the kind of girl who ran away. She was disciplined, a good student, and had been planning her college applications for months. Her closest friends swore there was nothing unusual in her life. No secret boyfriend, no family arguments. The following morning, her mother began searching on her own. Just outside of town, in the ditch along the road Sophia should have walked, she found her daughter's backpack. Inside were books, notebooks, and her phone, everything except the girl herself. It should have triggered an immediate, serious investigation. Instead, the police filed a bland report. The official search didn't start until 3 days later. By then, it was already too late. The town begins to whisper. Once the story hit the local newspaper, Rosenfeld changed. Parents escorted children to school. Doors were locked earlier, and whispers began. Some swore they had seen a dark van circling the area that night. Others insisted Sophia had been lured online. Then, 1 week later, a discovery turned unease into fear. On the edge of an abandoned warehouse just outside town, someone found a jacket. Sophia's jacket, folded neatly as if placed there on purpose. Next to it lay a sheet of paper with words cut from a newspaper headline. "Don't look for her." It was theatrical, almost mocking, and it meant whoever had taken her wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. They wanted attention. The journalist. One man who couldn't look away was Thomas Hirsch, a 36-year-old local journalist. Once he had worked in a big city newsroom, but clashes with his editors had forced him back home. He wasn't the type to accept easy answers, especially not when children disappeared. Thomas began asking questions. He checked bus timetables, gas station security cameras, and traffic routes. And on one grainy camera feed, he found something chilling. A black van without plates, passing along the road at 11:42 p.m., minutes after Sophia was last seen. In the headlights' reflection, Thomas swore he could see the silhouette of a girl walking on the roadside. A second later, she was gone. He brought the footage to the police. They dismissed it. "The quality is too low. Could be anyone." But Thomas knew what he had seen. The pattern. Digging deeper, Thomas realized something that made his blood run cold. Sophia wasn't the first. In the past 3 years, several teenage girls had disappeared across the county. Each case had ended with the same line in the police report, "Probable runaway," but their families told different stories. Daughters who had left behind phones, wallets, favorite clothes. Daughters who had promised to call home. Daughters who never would. One mother, Maria Vogel, had kept a personal archive. 2 years earlier, her 14-year-old had disappeared. She showed Thomas her notes. Photocopies of police statements, maps of search areas, and photographs of a jacket her daughter had once worn. Found folded on a railway platform. The same method. The same taunt. The first warning. Thomas wrote a short blog post summarizing his findings, careful not to reveal too much. The next day, he received an anonymous email. "This isn't random. It's a channel. Stop before you're buried in it." That night, his apartment was broken into. They didn't take his TV, his money, or his watch. They took only his laptop and 2 USB drives containing the footage and notes. In his kitchen, taped to the fridge, was a photograph of his car, taken from across the street the night before. Beneath it, a scrawled message. "You're next." The police shrugged. Just a burglary. Coincidence. But Thomas understood. He had touched something bigger than he realized. Something people were willing to kill for. The network. Thomas couldn't sleep after the break-in. The message was clear. Someone was watching him, and they wanted him to stop. But fear only sharpened his determination. He began reaching out to contacts from his old days in journalism. One of them, a police source who owed him a favor. Late one night, in a quiet bar, the man leaned close and whispered, "You're not chasing a missing girl. You're chasing a supply chain." According to the source, there had been quiet rumors inside law enforcement for years. Certain local officials were on the payroll of organized networks. These weren't the old-fashioned mafias that sold drugs or ran casinos. These were modern syndicates running people, teenagers, migrants, anyone who could disappear without much attention. The source told Thomas to look into freight companies, especially those with connections to Rosenfeld's abandoned factories. It's not about where they disappear, it's about where they're shipped. The warehouse. Guided by that hint, Thomas began staking out the old textile plant at the edge of town. For years it had been deserted, windows shattered, weeds growing through concrete. But now trucks were coming at odd hours, their logos painted over, their plates mismatched. One night, Thomas saw a van pull up. Two men got out, one tall, one broad, both dressed in dark jackets. They opened the rear doors. For a split second, Thomas thought he saw movement inside. Someone small, crouched, trying not to make a sound. His hands shook as he raised his camera. But just as he focused, one of the men glanced straight in his direction, as if sensing the lens on him. Thomas ducked. When he looked again, the van was gone. The next morning, a stray dog was found hanging on the warehouse fence. A warning to anyone watching too closely. A trail abroad. Determined, Thomas dug into shipping records. Many of the trucks leaving Rosenfeld didn't stop nearby. They drove straight to Hamburg, a major European port. And from Hamburg, containers could sail anywhere. One name kept appearing in the paperwork: Baltic Trade Solutions, a logistics company with offices in 3 countries. Officially, it handled industrial equipment. Unofficially, rumors linked it to smuggling. Through an old contact in Hamburg, Thomas obtained photos of one of the company's containers being loaded. What caught his eye wasn't the cargo, it was the driver. He was the same man Thomas had seen outside the warehouse. The pieces began to align. Sophia hadn't just been kidnapped. She had been trafficked, swept into a machinery that stretched across borders. The wall of silence. Thomas tried again to take his findings to the local police. This time he brought documents, photos, shipping records. The chief barely looked at them before sliding them back across the desk. "These are serious accusations," the chief said flatly. "You could ruin lives with this kind of speculation. I suggest you forget it." But what unsettled Thomas most wasn't the dismissal. It was the way the chief's eyes lingered on him, calculating, as though weighing whether to make him disappear too. That night, Thomas received another email. "You still don't understand. Rosenfeld isn't the end. It's the doorway. Close your notebook before you can't." Attached was a photo of Sophia, alive, eyes wide with terror. A newspaper dated just 2 days earlier lay beside her, proof it wasn't an old image. Thomas's hands went cold. She was still out there. But for how long? The offer. The next step came from an unexpected place. A woman contacted Thomas under the alias Mira. She claimed to have once worked inside the network as a translator for Eastern European routes. Now she was on the run. Meeting her was risky, but Thomas agreed. In a crowded train station cafe, she slid into the seat across from him. Her voice was low, her face hidden beneath a scarf. "They move girls like cargo," she said. "Every month, dozens vanish. Some are sent to private clients. Others go to brothels in big cities. And the officials? They're paid to look away." She handed Thomas a flash drive. Inside were spreadsheets, routes, coded names, and, most horrifying of all, photos. Rows of terrified faces, some no older than 12. "You can publish this," Mira whispered. "But once you do, they will hunt you. And if they can't get to you, they'll silence someone close to you." The trap. Thomas debated for days. The evidence was real, but releasing it without protection would mean his death. Still, he couldn't ignore Sophia's face on that photo. He decided to take one last risk. Arrange a meeting with a European investigative task force that specialized in trafficking. They agreed to meet him in Hamburg. On the train to the city, Thomas kept looking over his shoulder. Every passenger seemed suspicious. When he reached the meeting point, a quiet pier, he realized too late that something was wrong. No officers, no task force, just the black van. The men stepped out, same faces from the warehouse. One of them lit a cigarette. The other smiled. You should have listened. The last thing Thomas remembered was the metallic taste of blood as a blow struck his head. The vanishing of a journalist. 2 days later, Thomas Hirsch was declared missing. His apartment was searched, his notes gone, his hard drives wiped. Officially, the police claimed he had left voluntarily. But Maria Vogel, the mother who had lost her daughter years before, didn't believe it. Using fragments of Thomas's old blog posts and the contacts he had trusted, she began her own small movement online. Soon, other families joined, parents, siblings, friends of the missing. Together, they created a network louder than the syndicate had expected. Stories began surfacing across borders. Journalists in other countries picked them up. The syndicate tried to bury the noise, but for the first time, it was leaking into daylight. And then, one morning, on a dark web forum used for illegal trades, a single post appeared. A girl named Sophia, still alive, for now. The final thread. Maria Vogel knew she couldn't stop. Thomas had been the only journalist who cared about her story, and now he was gone too. If she gave up, both he and her daughter would vanish into silence. She began following the clues he'd left, encrypted blog drafts, strange notations on shipping records, fragments of emails from the woman called Mira. Piece by piece, she built the puzzle. The trail led once again to Hamburg. Maria sold her jewelry, borrowed money from relatives, and traveled there alone. Hamburg's shadows. The city was alive with neon and noise, but in the back alleys near the port, the air smelled of oil, rust, and something else, fear. Maria walked the docks, pretending to be lost, until she found what she was looking for. A fenced lot filled with unmarked trucks. She recognized one immediately, the van from Thomas's photo. Her heart pounded as she watched 2 men load crates into the back. For a split second, one crate moved from the inside. A muffled cry escaped. Maria nearly screamed, but forced herself to stay quiet. She followed the truck as it pulled away. Hours later, it stopped at a warehouse by the Elbe River. There were guards, cameras, iron doors. But in a window high above, Maria saw faces. Pale, terrified, pressed against the glass. She clutched her phone. She could call the police, but Thomas's warnings echoed in her head. The local police were compromised. The raid that never came. Maria contacted Mira. The woman agreed to meet her in a small safe house on the edge of the city. Mira looked thinner, more frightened than before. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. Once they know you're here, you're finished. But Maria begged her for help. My daughter. She could still be alive. Please. Mira hesitated, then handed her another flash drive. These are schedules. Routes. If you get this to the right people, maybe you can save some of them. But not all. That night, Maria tried to contact the European task force Thomas had trusted. Their official line denied knowing him. She sent them the files anyway. Days passed. No response. And then one evening, as Maria returned to her hotel, she noticed the door slightly ajar. Inside, her belongings had been searched. On the bed lay a single object, her daughter's necklace. The choice. Maria broke down, but anger pulled her back to her feet. If no one else would act, she would. She returned to the warehouse at dawn, carrying nothing but her phone and the necklace. She slipped inside through a broken side door. The air was thick with dust and sweat. Crates lined the walls, some nailed shut, others trembling from within. She whispered Sophia's name, desperate. From somewhere deep inside, a voice answered. Mom! Her breath caught. She stumbled toward the sound. And there, behind a locked cage, was Sophia. Thinner, weaker, but alive. They reached for each other through the bars. Hold on. I'll get you out, Maria promised. But before she could move, Heavy footsteps thundered behind her. Guards. Their shadows stretched long across the concrete. The end of silence. Maria was dragged away, screaming. The last thing she saw was Sophia's face, her hand reaching out through the cage. The next day, police announced that Maria Vogel had disappeared in Hamburg. They suggested she had run away, unstable from grief. Her case was quietly closed. But weeks later, an anonymous package arrived at a major European newsroom. Inside was a hard drive, containing everything Maria and Thomas had collected. Spreadsheets, photos, names, routes, proof. The story exploded across the continent. For the first time, governments were forced to acknowledge the scale of the trafficking network. Raids were launched, arrests made, and yet, most of the leaders remained untouched, hidden behind layers of money and politics. Sophia's name appeared on no official rescue list. Neither did Maria's. But in the forums of the dark web, whispers spread of a girl who had once been marked for sale and was now missing from the catalog. Some believed she had died. Others claimed she had escaped into hiding. No one knew the truth. What remained was the story, the voices of those who refused to stay silent, even when it cost them everything. Epilogue. Years later, a candlelit vigil was held in Rosenfeld. Dozens of families gathered, each holding photos of the missing. Maria's sister stood among them, holding both Maria's picture and Sophia's necklace. As the crowd chanted their names, a journalist in the back whispered, "They tried to erase them, but the story is louder than the silence." And in some hidden corner of the world, perhaps Sophia heard the last truth. Months after Maria's disappearance, European investigators launched multiple raids across Germany, Poland, and the Netherlands. Dozens of warehouses were uncovered, cages opened, children and women rescued. The press called it the largest anti-trafficking operation in decades. But the network adapted quickly. For every arrested smuggler, 2 more stepped forward. For every victim freed, others vanished into the shadows. Thomas's files and Maria's evidence had lit a fire, but the system was far bigger than anyone wanted to admit. One winter night, a package arrived at the office of Der Morgenblatt, a German newspaper. Inside, a simple photograph. It showed a young girl walking down a busy street in Prague. She looked older, thinner, but unmistakable. Around her neck hung a small silver necklace. The same necklace Maria had once found on her hotel bed. No message, no explanation, only a date scribbled on the back. Still here, still running. Legacy. Maria was gone. Thomas was gone. Countless others silenced. But their story refused to die. It traveled across borders, whispered in classrooms, printed in newspapers, spread online where officials could not bury it. Every time a parent lit a candle, every time a missing poster was taped to a wall, the silence was broken again. And somewhere out there, whether in hiding, in flight, or in chains, a girl named Sophia carried the memory of those who had never stopped searching for her. The world might not have saved her, but the story had made sure she would never be forgotten.